Hey guys, welcome back. In the last one, we set up this modify current stat value function. And now let's complete the components with the balance functions. So we're going to create one called get base stat value. Not get, set base stat value, sorry. All right, so now we're going to add two inputs to this. The first one is going to be of type enum, estats, and the second one is going to be a float. We're going to name this stat and value. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to get our base stats variable, and we want to find the input of the function, which is stat. So let's get stat. Get stat and plug this up. Now what we're going to do here is from this, we want to call set members in our structure base stats. We want to expose the base stat pin, so that way we can pass the value. And now we want to get our base stats variable then. And we want to say add. So you want to add that value to our base stats. So connect this up. The struct out will be this pin. And for the stat, we're going to duplicate that and plug this up like so. So now this function is finished. Let's compile and save. Now we're going to duplicate this function and we're going to rename it to set max stat value. And we're going to uncheck the base value pin and check the max value pin and connect this up. And that is all for these two functions. Now, we need to create another function. This function is going to be called receive damage. Okay, so let's create a new function. I'm going to call this receive damage. Yeah, receive damage. And we want to take in an input of type float, and we're going to call this incoming damage. Right, and we want to get our incoming damage. And then we want to multiply that by a divided value. So our incoming damage, plug it up here as well. And we want to divide that value by the incoming damage plus whatever armor value we have, because we will be using the armor stat later on in the series. So we want to do is get current stat value, not set, get current stat value for, okay, so we don't have armor. Let's open up our enum, estats, and we want to add a new enum. I want to call this armor. Nice, so save. Now compile, refresh this function, and now you should have the armor. Now, all you need to do is connect this up, like so. Right. Divided, addition, multiplied. Nice. So what we need to do now is clamp this value, clamp float, and this will also be the max. And we want to set a new local variable called local damage. So let's plug this up. Next, what we need to do is get our incoming damage variable and multiply this by -1 to inverse the value. So instead of adding, it will be minusing. And we want to call modify current stat value function. And this will be the value, the stat will be the health, and should regenerate will be set to true. Now we need to add a branch, connect this here, and we need to check if the current stat value for health is less than or equal to 0. And if it is, that means the player has just died. So we'll leave a comment here, and we want to say set death state. We will be using a state manager component later in the series, so we will be creating that component hopefully sooner than later. Right, so we need to create another function. This one is going to be called regenerate stamina. Right, let's see. How can we create this? So let's get the current stat value for stamina, and we want to add that to a new variable. We want to call this stamina regen rate. It's going to be of type float, and we're going to plug it up. So the current stat value added to the add the stamina regen rate. The stamina regen rate is going to be a value of 0.5, and we want to clamp that value because again we don't want to go above or below the max stat value or the minimum stat value. So we're going to clamp that value between 0 and the max stat value. So let's get max stat value function, and we're going to get the stamina as the stat, and we're going to plug this up as the max. Now what we need to do is call the set current stat value function, and this value is going to be this, and the stat is going to be stamina, obviously. Now what we need to do is duplicate these two functions, current stat value and max stat value, and what we need to do is we want to check if the current stat value is greater than or equal to the max stat value, and if it is, then we want to stop regenerating. So we will call clear timer by function name, and the function name is going to be the input of this function, which is regenerate stamina. I'm going to paste this in here. I'm going to promote it to a variable. I'm going to call this stamina regen name. All right, so now compile, save, and that is it for this function. The next one is going to be called perform death. And this perform death function is going to be really short. We need to bind an event to on current stat value updated. Plug this up here, and we want to create an event. So we're going to create a matching function, and this function is going to be called apply death. Right, let's head back to the perform death function and ensure that apply death is selected. We compile and save. Now on the apply death function, what we need to do is check if the stat type is equal to health and if the value is less than or equal to 0. So we need to call an AND boolean here. So if these two conditions return true, only then we call our death state. Again, I'm going to leave a comment. I'm going to say set death state. Nice. Compile and save. We have one last thing to set up, which is the stamina regeneration custom event right here. So what we need to do is add a switch statement. So switch on eStats, and we want to get the stamina value here. So we want to call clear timer by function name first, and we're going to slot in the stamina regen name as the function name, and then we want to add a retriggerable delay, and this is why we didn't do it in a function. Plug this up here, and the duration is going to be 1.5. I'm going to promote this to a variable. We're going to call this stamina cooldown. Now, what we're going to do is call a set timer by function name. And the function name, again, is going to be this stamina regen name. The time is going to be 0.03, and looping is going to be set to true. Now, I'm just going to highlight all of this and straighten my pins. Keep things neat. You can add your comments to this. And that is all for the stats component. We need to create one last function, which is to initialize the stats component. So in the next video, I'll create that function, and then we'll move on to creating the widgets to display our stats. So yeah, guys, see you in the next one.